Do same thing, hit on the edge. That'll get that going pretty hot. Carry a lighter with you in the woods. All this stuff about using magnesium rods and all that kind of stuff. Sure, that's nice. See ya. It was 68 degrees in the house this morning. I just made one fire. It went out about, I don't know, 2 in the morning. Good morning. You know, I didn't realize what I was going to talk about until I had a long conversation with a good friend of mine down in Argentina. And the reason I got into this conversation with my good friend, who also happens to be a doctor, this will come forward in all the notes that I've taken here, is that another friend of mine who's over in Asia was asking me, because he's starting to realize that he should be thinking about where he should be, quote, bugging out to. And I've been trying to get across to my friend for 5 years where to bug out to. Back then, it was like, come up to Alaska. I could easily get him a job immediately. He'd be totally secured. He'd be working on getting his own land, etc., etc., etc. But Alaska's not really an option now. Even though the realtors are trying to sell you on the idea, and there's all these channels now on trying to get you to move up to Alaska because you're going to get away. But they don't talk about the meth heads. They don't talk about the realtors who will sell you basically what I consider the Alaska equivalent of the old stories in the 1920s when they used to sell people swampland in Florida, right? Well, there's swampland in Alaska, and it's very dangerous. But I'm talking with my doctor, and we became friends when we were filming Treasure Quest Snake Island in Argentina.
As we walked in, I was actually feeling the sense of opening up a whole new world. We have tapped into a very ancient history that not very many people know about.
And I'm elated because he is doing the same thing, but he's years late. And hopefully he will be able to catch up in time to what I started thinking about in 2008. If I did not make it clear enough to you, I started envisioning myself coming back to Alaska not 5 years ago, not 10 years ago, all the way back in 2008. I had just come back from a contract working for the Korean Army in Jamshil at their military intelligence school. And I was living in San Francisco, and that was right about the time that the 25-cent increase in fuel hit. This was during Bush Jr. And people were losing their, as we used to say, they were losing their shit. They couldn't believe that the price had only gone up 25 cents, not percent, cents. Truckers were not willing to drive because they said, hey, I make money by staying home. By the way, I'm just starting this fire. So I've been shooting a segment. You got a little bit of it on helping people start a fire. This fire was started, this is the Scandinavian style top-down burn. Next one, if I'm starting from a cold start, I'll show you how to do the bottom up. If I'm doing a cold start, I prefer to do the top down, just because it gets the draft going up in the stovepipe. And as I'm talking, I am checking that stovepipe, because I don't want it to get too far into the red on this one, or have it just pop into the red and let it burn for a little bit. That'll clean out pretty much all the creosote all the way up through the stovepipe, to the point that other people are cleaning out their stovepipe like every 2 weeks. A lot of times I won't clear out the stovepipe until the end of each season, like winter, spring, summer, fall, right? And it's because I do a proper burn. So every morning, when I do a start up in the morning, and I'll either have, like, if it's cold winter, like I said, it's 35 degrees. It's not cold at all. It's 11 o'clock, and now I'm starting the fire. But for the previous 4 hours, I've been studying, reading, doing my interview with my friend in Argentina, trying to get squared away. And the reason I'm getting squared away, I got to talk about this, is it's like, I like Michael. I consider Michael Yon, we're talking about Michael Yon, a friend. We text each other back and forth, see what's up. We haven't actually talked in person. First time we talked, he was in Hong Kong, and we spent 3 hours just talking and talking. We had a mutual friend, Scotty Helvinston, who got killed. He's one of the guys who was hanging from Fallujah, in the bridge from Fallujah. That's a wild story that I'll talk about, that I knew 2 people involved in that event directly. One of them was Scotty and his group at Blackwater that got killed. And then the group that came in at night to pull the bodies out secretly. That was Jim Steele. You guys who know Jim Steele, you know who I'm talking about. There's a guy who gave you the look of death. That guy. Colonel Jim Steele. Mill Group Commander when I first arrived in Central America. But we'll talk about that later. But Michael, I'm realizing that Michael is doing something that I do not like, which is called parachute journalism. And the reason I'm talking about Argentina right now is he said that, I gave Doug Casey a call to find out what was happening in Argentina. Last I recall, Doug Casey doesn't speak Spanish. If you don't speak the language of the country you're reporting on, you really can't say you're reporting on that country. And if you use a source, an asset, who is in the country, who just happens to be in the country but doesn't speak the language, that's not reporting. And the intel that's brought back on that is questionable. And I'm going to tell you how questionable it is. And it goes back to my friend in Asia who's thinking about where to go. So we've got, Matt Smith. He's probably got a really good operation. I like what he's doing. He's actually living the word. Living the word is what I do here, which is I tell you what I'm going to do, and then I do it. I don't dabble. And I'm probably going to get in hot water by saying this, but Matt Smith is a doer. He's the one who's doing the dirty work. And Doug Casey has been a dabbler. Because I told you I used to hunt people. And when you hunt people, you do a whole spec. So when I'm going to learn about somebody who I might be associated with in the future or not, I do a background check. I go find everything I can find, especially on what's available on public. I mean, shoot, look at the controversial shit on me. Can't wait to go through that beautiful rabbit hole. But Doug Casey, he's known these people, he's played with these people, but we used to call him, people like him, camp followers. You know who the camp followers were? Soldiers would go, like in the Napoleonic Wars, they would go and they would fight, and then you'd have all the camp followers, the women, the children, the tailors, the support, they would come up, and they would be making money, and they would be interacting with the soldiers, but they weren't the soldiers. They weren't the fighters. Doug Casey is a camp follower. He's met a lot of people through his life, but he's not lived the life of the people that he's known. That's very important. That's the reason he's dabbling in Argentina. He's dabbling in Chesapeake Bay. These are dabblers. You want to listen to the people who are going to be in the fight, who are already in the fight. So let's talk about the stuff that my doctor friend told me. He's doing his own farm. And his friends are telling him he's nuts. They call him a hippie, right? Oh, everything's going to be fine. Why? You're a doctor. You should be buying a Mercedes. You should be buying a new car. You should be doing all this kind of stuff. Instead of putting all this money into this land, you're creating like a... I'm not going to go into it too, because it'd be easy if somebody were to look for him. And that's the reason we're talking about this, is because you need to be in a country where you have your food, water, shelter, community, and security. We're going to talk about these things and what they represent. Why I'm in Alaska. Remember, last night Jan was like reading off his list of countries he's been to. I bet you my list is pretty close. It might even be one more. And actually some of the countries that I've been, they are no longer there. Okay? So that's why I don't even think about it. I have to actually go back through my list. And I did last night because he was going through his list and I go, God dang, interesting. When you're going to report on a place, speak the language, find out who the people really are. Do not rely on translators or locals because they have their own lens that you're looking through that prevents you from seeing what's really happening. So my friend, the doctor, is telling me what he's doing. And then he's telling me what has been happening in Argentina that's not being reported. I'm floored because I have not been able to find this in English. But when I started looking for it in Spanish, like I gave you a hint of it in terms of the level, not just, oh, well, there's some fires and maybe the IDF is doing this. No, it's the idea there's a full-on invasion, just like it's been done up here. But here, down in Argentina, it's by the Israelis because they fucked up everything over in the Middle East and they're looking for an escape plan. The escape plan is Patagonia. And Argentina is screwed in the same way that America is because of complacency. That's what we could not believe. Why are people not up in arms right now based on what's happening? Who knows? It might happen because of all the stuff that's been coming out with the Epstein files. But you've got this normalcy bias that continues with, oh, it's all just planted stuff. Oh, Trump could not have been doing that with a 13-year-old girl, 15-year-old girl, threatening the girl. And that was the deposition. That was the information that was held from the public. Remember, who benefits from this? And I'm not just talking about Trump. Who else benefits? Who benefits by Trump being in office? We know for sure Israel's been benefiting, except when Trump just can't take it anymore and he blows a gasket and he doesn't bomb Iran because Israel wanted him to. And guess what happens that weekend? Whoops! Super drop. Such a super stupid drop that the identities of some of these poor girls was never sanitized, and now they've closed off the files so you can't get to those files, but it doesn't matter because those files are just floating around anyway. And so the identity of these poor women, girls, women now, but girls back then, is available to the public depending on which social media person released it, right? So let's get back to the idea. What is happening in Argentina? And like I'm going to put in this title for this one is Milei'S, Argentina, and You. Because as we're going to talk about this, I'll jump to the end where my doctor buddy and I were talking about what he thinks. And I think, that's a great idea. Which is they're experimenting with all this shit in Argentina for basically the rest of the world. So when I'm done, I'm sending a link to this show to my cousins in Ecuador and saying, cuida, ¿qué está pasando allá en Argentina? Va a pasar en Ecuador, Chile, Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, all these places. USA, Canada. What they're doing, and it's working, and it's worked slightly in the United States, as evidenced by how Trump used Sean and how he used Joe Rogan, used all these social media pawns to achieve his successes, to get in, to do what his handlers want him to do. In the same way that was done with Milei. So what has happened with Milei? Now, I understand the idea that you want to cut down on the spending of your country because you're in debt. And that should have been done in this country too. So we have a problem in this country. We don't know how to watch ourselves. We don't know how to cut ourselves off. So let me close this off because it's getting hot. Oh. When When it gets on a first burn, it starts really blazing. I don't even want to put the catalytic converter on right now. I will turn this down because it's up there. Yeah, I'll drop that. Just drop that. And it'll just be a nice burn like you normally see. So, here's one that just floored me. So, Milei's, right when he gets in, this is like a year ago, in San Juan, which is toward the center of Argentina, they have what's called a semilla repository. Semillas are seeds. So they have a seeds depository, a central one, where the people who are barely scraping by and the farmers can go get free seeds for their gardens, for their farms, close it down, surrounded by the military, wouldn't let anybody in. So whatever was in there rotted, lost. And basically was cutting off the food supply and the independence. And this is the stupidity of it. And this is the reason you have to create your own seed banks. We're talking some evil stuff. If they're doing it in Argentina, they're going to do it here. Remember, this is, the more I look at it, this is an experiment. It's an experiment in Argentina to find out what a citizenry will take and what they will do. So, they close down the seed repository, and my notes, every reporter should have a freaking good reporter's notebook. I mean, I've been doing this since, 1983, as an 18-year-old kid. Even then I knew, take notes. When you're entered, but this is the one, a year ago. So, medications for diabetics, for the elderly, the people who most likely would not have the money except in a very small elite group. There was a 60% increase in the price of their medications. So most people could not afford them. But here's the part of it that's mind-blowing, is that there was no reaction. Nobody reacted to it. And wild. So no protests occur. And people are wondering why. Because normally something like that, there would be some type of, let's get that thing going. There would be some type of resistance, some type of wait a minute, you can't be doing this, especially to the elderly. They can't defend themselves. The youngers would at least do that. There's a customary part of that in Latin America, traditions. They've been wiping out traditions to the point that, like in the United States, where we have fractionation, now where families can't even get together. I can't get together with parts of my family. The same thing is happening in South America. That's unheard of. Unheard of. Even during the worst of the worst in Chile and Argentina, families would get together. Even in El Salvador, when we had a full-on war and people were killing each other, in a full-on war, families would try to get together. Remember I told you that I'm friends with a family, which one of the older mayoral families of San Salvador. So I knew the story of these two brothers who were cousins of my friends. These two brothers, they were shipped out to Spain immediately because they were FMLN. So you've got the one who's the mayor of the city and his kids are freaking commies. And I mean, not just commies, I mean, they're guerrillas. Get shipped out, boom, boom. It's nice to be rich. So what's happening is this experiment down in Argentina is they're playing out things to see how they can modify the society. Right? So now families don't even get together the way they used to for Sunday meals. My family still gets together in South America. I know this because my mother's getting with family Sundays. Play cards, whatever. But in Argentina, that's splitting up. And it's splitting up because of people who are just true blue, like their own MAGA, with Milei in Argentina. And those who are against Milei or don't like what he's doing. But the wild part are how the government is playing it. First of all, they're playing it openly. They even published, this is wild. So Milei was all talking about, the reason you're cutting money is because you're going to make the government more efficient. All right? Remember, I'm giving you that history story and the history of the Constitution. The Constitution, our Constitution, was written, your Constitution, my Constitution, if you're an American, was written to protect us from the government. It was not in order to control us. It was to control the government from stealing what is rightfully us under the eyes of God. Okay? We have God-given rights. All human beings actually do have God-given rights. And under the Constitution, we are protected as American citizens by that Constitution. It was written for us. Other countries, they can do whatever the hell they want. I don't care. It's their problem. It's not our problem. And this was clear to the Founding Fathers. Because if it becomes our problem, it means that we are actually trying to be the emperors dictating to them what their problem is. It has nothing to do with us. Culturally, we are unique because we are a melting pot, even though they don't want to call it a melting pot anymore. We are from different countries, different cultures. But for those of us who actually wanted to be Americans, came to be here to be Americans, means we follow the laws, understand the laws, which hasn't happened in the last 10 years because of the invasion that was launched on us by the prior administration. And how dastardly that is. And it's just part of the whole UN thing, the Rockefeller thing that they're doing in Europe. Germans should be freaking infuriated, but they just bend over and take it because, we gotta be guilty for something because we're guilty. So the Germans are getting screwed. The French are getting screwed. The Italians are making a stand, but it's kind of late. And all the other countries there. Well, Denmark maybe is cleaning up. Holland not. Sweden is screwed. Norway maybe not. Finland recognizes what it's like to be invaded. But it's wild. All this stuff is just like people don't understand their own histories. And America's been so good at propaganda. But guess who's better than the US in propaganda? Argentina. Especially under the Milei administration. So, when they had this thing with the increase of the medicines for the elderly of 60%, which is insane, the military and the police are called in. And this is what's so wild. The expense that was wasted was 3 times as much to repress the protests and demonstrations than it was to actually just assist in the elderly not having to pay 60% more for their medications. Think about that. But then it makes sense, right? Because what does a government do best? A government spends. Government doesn't make money, doesn't make a better life for people. It takes. That's the reason our Constitution was created, to keep the government from getting bigger. Because when the government gets bigger, the government gets hungry. And when the monster gets hungry, it eats the little people. Pretty simple. But I guess it's just a little bit too simple for all these intelligentsia who keep on pushing big government. And what's going to be a bigger government than a democratic republic that's gone awry? Oh, a socialist government that's spot on. Okay, so what else have they been fucking people over with down there? Yes, the fires. We talked a little bit about the fires. It's just clear. Argentines know this. But what can they do? Because Milei quietly knocks everything down. And this is the wild. They had their midterm elections. Guess what they did? This floored me. This floored me because this is the thing. When you understand PSYOPs, the easiest ones to hit with a PSYOP are the young. Now, when I think young, I'm thinking like, well, voting age, right? No, we'll go a little bit younger. So, the Milei administration, I mean, they're spending money. And they're telling everybody this. They're telling everybody this. This is wild. Normally, when you have a conspiracy, they keep it quiet. Nowadays, they don't keep conspiracies quiet anymore. Now they just put it in your face. That's this thing with Charlie Kirk. Is it really a secret that freaking Israel fucking whacked his ass? Yeah. And the TPUSA is a fucking racket? Nah. But people just keep on throwing money because they can't believe it. That's called normalcy bias. If you follow normalcy bias, you're setting yourself up to die. That means you're rigid. The universe is not rigid. Your universe is always changing. Just like the flicker of the flame. Flame comes in, flame goes out. Flame dances right, left, right. That's the universe. That's the way the world goes. It moves. And it doesn't matter how old or young. And that's actually when the olds are getting to the point of passing on, is they can't move anymore. They can't adjust. They can't change. They get rigid. They get stuck. They're in the rut. And then, earlier years, they get fired from businesses and jobs. Older, they can't do anything for themselves. That's why I tell everybody all the time, yes, maybe later I'll get a gas-operated wood splitter. But the reason I split my wood personally, even though I'm 62 years old, and I am looking to keep on splitting my wood by myself, that's 6 to 10 cord a year, every year. 6 to 10 cord. That's 2 truckloads. That truckload that you saw, 2 of those every year. Bucking it up with a chainsaw, splitting them. It keeps me in shape. It keeps me thinking. You get that chainsaw dancing around in the wrong way, you could lose a limb. You get that axe coming down in the wrong way, you could lose a limb. Pay attention. That's why I do it. It forces me to. You put yourself in the environment, and the environment will keep you trim and attuned. The world right now is trying to distract you, let you relax, let you think everything's calm and groovy, everything's cool. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it for you. Oh, yeah. Uncle Sugar will take care of it for you. Until Uncle Sugar can't take care of it anymore. And we learned that during the bonus army, when all the World War I veterans didn't get their stipend that they were promised when they really needed it. And this is why when you have relatives who remember Douglas MacArthur before World War II and Douglas MacArthur after World War II, see, when he said, "I shall return back to the Philippines," that's when everybody said, oh, yeah. So those are like the 18 and 19-year-olds who went to World War II from like 1943 and on. But the guys who were in Guadalcanal with the Marine Corps and the Army, fighting in the jungles, not with M1 Garands, because they didn't come out. Marine Corps, that's why I got my dad's Springfield. He loved the Springfield because the Old Corps, that's an old joke in the Marine Corps. Old Corps, New Corps. The Old Corps that had been in World War II is compared to Korea. Korea, they all got M1 Garands. In World War II, at the beginning, they were fighting with Springfields left over from World War. Well, it wasn't left over because it was the A3. It's a 1903 A3, which was an evolution that happened just before World War II, before the Garand came out. They were fighting with bolts against Japanese with bolts. But they were fighting under MacArthur. And they freaking hated MacArthur because they knew what MacArthur did at the Capitol. Basically running the cavalry through. And civilians died. They burned to death in their tents. So Americans were being killed by American military on American soil. Our Constitution is supposed to say you're not supposed to have the military, right? On our soil, blah, blah, blah. Well, there are instances, and it can be called in. And that's the reason when it's unjust, you have the right to fight back. No, I'm not talking about ICE. That's a totally different thing. American citizens being attacked by the U.S. military on U.S. soil. That's when the tyranny and the dictatorship really hits its force. But we have a problem in this country is we've been taken over. How this is going to play out? If you've done it right and you're still in this country, it won't affect you until they have a total regime change, which will be socialist. And it'll have no bearing whatsoever into the U.S. Constitution. It won't even try to dance around the Constitution the way this administration is dancing around the Constitution. Like every administration has been dancing around the Constitution since Abraham Lincoln, including Abraham Lincoln, revolving around the War of Secession and understanding what that War of Secession was all about. It wasn't about slaves. And anybody who tries to sell that to you followed all the Rothschild propaganda, and they need to read. They need to read more. So this experiment that's happening down in Argentina, it's interesting because the PSYOP is working where years ago people would have been resisting. They would have been rioting. They would have been protesting. They would have made their word heard. They're not doing that. Does that kind of ring a bell? Like here in the States where things are happening and people aren't doing anything? They cut the family mortgages, so families now can't go get homes. Guess what's going to be coming to the United States? It's already happening. For those who are now too late in getting out to go get land, or can't afford the land that they could have afforded under a mortgage if they'd done it 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it's going to be really hard now to go get that land. So these are another considerations. I'm now going back to my friend's question. Where can I move to? Where can you move to? Damn. So, Max Smith down in Uruguay, they're trying to get people to come down, and they've got a community that they're building down there. Why didn't I move to Uruguay? It's one of them. It's not always been, because if you remember the history, when you go to a country, check the history. I know the history of Ecuador. I know the history of Peru. I definitely, intimately know the military history and the cartel history of Colombia and northern Ecuador and Venezuela. I still have assets in Venezuela. Years after Chavez came in, I still have assets. I bring this up again. When you're getting intel, be sure of who you're getting your intel from, whether it's valid, and how can you use it. Jan is getting intel. Can you use this intel? What do you know about Sweden? What do you know about memoirist, and shipping? How does the shipping affect you? Let me try to help you in trying to understand the information that Jan is getting to you. If you're not a financial advisor or in a big JP Morgan and you're one of their analysts. And I'm going to bring it down into minutiae. I live in Alaska. Alaska has gone from a people who, when the state, before the founding of this territory as a state, was about 70% was self-reliant. 70-80% was self-reliant. Everything else was being supported in Anchorage and the military bases by imports from outside. By the time I was living here the first time after I came back from the war in Central America, and I needed a place to get away and write my first book, the one about my imprisonment in Vietnam in 83, 84. The population was about, and this is according to actual stats, like I mentioned 2 weeks ago, that the stats is that 1991, there was about 54% of the Alaska residents, that's including villages, so we're talking natives, when they still had high tunnels and they were growing all their vegetables and everything independent, they were hunting, maybe they had a few pigs. 54% of the population of Alaska. Right now, according to the latest stats from the Farm Bureau, 90 to 95% of Alaska residents are reliant, not, oh, it's nice to have, are reliant on imports coming from the lower 48. And those imports come on a barge. I don't know if it's like every week or every 2 weeks, that barge comes up and it has so much on it that just gets unloaded. All the containers get offloaded off that barge and goes out to, there's stuff that goes through Canada, but you know, our issues with Canada causes an issue with transportation and getting it through the borders and getting it up to Alaska on trucks. That's why a lot of people don't want to ship up to Alaska. And when it comes up very expensive. So if we had a bottleneck like would be in the Panama Canal, and the Chinese owned it, and they choked us off of it, which, by the way, Carter releasing the canal was the stupidest thing. Remember, these administrations are being controlled to destroy. And they don't start like immediately, okay, we're going to destroy the United States this week. No, they do this over and over and over. And I watched a very interesting show by David Icke about how is it that you have this continuity. And he talks about these entities that are continuing to keep this line going generation after generation. That personally, I understand, going all the way back to 1908, having read the Dodd report and the full Reese committee reports. Damn. I mean, every war has been contrived, led into by false flags or stupid agreements like World War I. And all of them in order to create stress and chaos and do these resets. And in the later talk, I'll go into why they have these resets. But basically, it's the idea of how can you make a killing on the rise as compared to having to rely on shorts in stocks, right? Wall Street, everything is great. But all the real turmoil and the chaos that's been happening in this world, it got ramped up when Wall Street got ramped up. And guess who ramped up the U.S. Wall Street, Main Street? Not Main Street, but I mean, yeah, Wall Street. Was August Belmont. If you haven't had a chance, just go to Wikipedia and type in the name August Belmont. Related to Rothschilds. Related to increasing Wall Street. Related to getting the South to get into a civil war against the North. Or a war of secession against the North. And then flipping sides and getting into the Union and becoming best buddies with Abraham Lincoln until Abraham Lincoln realizes what happened. And suddenly Abraham Lincoln gets shot in the back of the head by Booth. Wilkes Booth. How does that happen? Assassinations don't accidentally happen. It's not some wacko. If it's a wacko who got the gun handed to him, made sure that it was loaded, or unloaded, depending on what happened with Trump, and is sent on his way or her way to go do the dirty work. See, because they don't get their hands dirty. They work various ways, just like Epstein. Epstein is a handler. He handles all these billionaires, all these elites, and he gets them to do things. That's how these people play. This is some evil shit, by the way. And if you're like me, you do everything. Once you realize this, it took me a while. I didn't like grow up going, hey, I know everything's happening. No, it wasn't until I came back from the war in Central America, and about, a couple months later, I read a book, The Naked Capitalist. And I read that, and I'm going, what the fuck did I do for 5 years? Why did I even become a journalist? What's the point? And I've had this talk with Jan. Why do you do this? Why are you fucking doing this, man? Where's it going? Jan's mentality is he is going to be there in every conflict. And I've implored him, said, dude, go get your piece of land. Go down and pray. He's probably got a great invitation from Casey and Smith down there with International, I forget the name. And he could easily get some land in Uruguay. I'd actually say better in Paraguay, but then you're not by the coast. And see, that's why everybody likes it. Well, at least we can go to the beach. Well, you can't go to the beach unless you're going to the river if you're in Paraguay. But nobody messes with you in Paraguay. And that's the reason the Nazis went there. I bet you after they're done with Patagonia, there's going to be a lot of IDF guys who are going to be hunted, who are going to be running to Paraguay just like the Nazis before. It's interesting that they're following the same trail. But if you know the history of the Nazis and the Zionists, you realize they're best buddies. And I don't think it ever broke. Which, if you're Jewish and some of your family got killed in the Holocaust, I'd be pissed at the Zionists. And kind of like Normal Finkelstein. Because he knows, he understands how the Zionists and the Jews are not the same thing. And why there's so many of it. There's actually a deeper story as to why there's actually probably more Christians who are Zionists than there are Jews. Why would the Christians be jumping in with Jews to bring along the apocalypse? The return of Christ, the second coming of Christ is going to come, but we have to be in the total annihilation of the world, right, for that to happen. So if you can ride on the backs of the Jews who think that they got to bring back their Messiah because they don't feel that their Messiah has already come, then the, quote, Judeo-Christians can jump on that, and then they're going to be saved. There's some twisted shit here. And if you don't grasp that as a critical thinker and go, fuck. Because I'm a Christian. And there are points that I think, I have very Buddhist-like views because I was raised in Asia. I understand Buddhism. I understand how it relates. I also understand how close Buddhism and Christianity are. And how very different Buddhism and Judaism are. Very different. And I could understand that they've said that Christ had gone to the east and met one of the Buddhas and learned from him and brought that knowledge back in the years that he was away, right? Okay. But we're in a situation right now where they're experimenting in Argentina with what they're going to do up here, which is using social media. So getting back to the kids. And again, it's like these people are so arrogant. This is the wild part. They don't keep it secret. They tell you the evilness that they're going to do. I had heard that the reason they do that is that if you didn't know about it, then it in their view, it's a sin because you were just sneaking something on them, right? But if they tell you about it and you ignore it, then it's on you and not on them. And so they won't have to pay in hell for that. And you're just a sucker. Because you had the chance, but your normalcy bias got the better of you. And you said it was going to get better, and it's going to get better on its own. Or even better, Uncle Sugar's going to take care of it for you. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Uncle Sugar's going to take care of it for you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally ignoring the fact that everybody who came to this country previously didn't come here to trust the government. They came here because the government could never be trusted, but at least it had some shackles on it. It did. Under the Constitution. Which is wild, because I was just watching last week. You know, there I was sitting, I'm watching Robert Kiyosaki, and he says, I don't keep my gold in the United States. I keep it in Switzerland. I keep my gold in Switzerland. Yeah, Robert. You know how stupid that makes you seem? When you say in the same sentence, because you don't trust your government, but you'll trust another government. Oh, yeah. I laugh at these people. Because I'm not going to cry, because that would be the only other option. It's like one of the sayings I had heard, which is that history repeats itself. First, this is a saying I got. It's an Argentine one. That history repeats itself. First, it's a tragedy, and then it's a comedy. Is that not fucked up? Yeah. So we're definitely not in the initial tragedy. We're now in the comedy, because it's laughable that we haven't paid attention. We're letting it happen again. And we're just going along. People are just going along. You can't fight the wave. It's just like this scene right here, you know, where it's, what was that movie? This is the movie where they're, you know, Maximilian Schnell and Tia, what's her name? They're on the beach, father and daughter, and they're just holding each other. And that tidal wave, that monster wave. I mean, man, that wave, the asteroid has just hit the planet, and that wave is just coming in. And what are you going to do? Well, those are the normalcy bias people. They just sat there. They didn't do a damn thing. They didn't do what the other people did, which is they got to the hills. Run to the Empire Hills. That's what I did. And I hope you still got time. You still have time. Even with the shit that's going down right now, you still have time. Food, water, security, shelter, community. You'll be able to get your money if you want by whatever you're able to, if you've got strategic assets. We'll talk about that later. Strategic assets versus hard assets. What are they? Hard assets, shit. Gold, silver, ammo. Those are hard assets. You can actually trade them as cash. My friends have already been trading ammo in Texas for services or items. Oh, and that's the reason, you know, you want to be, security, why am I not in South America? Because in South America, you know how hard it'd be to get one of these? You want to be able to freaking defend yourself. That's the security. Because security, if you're relying on the cops to show up, it's 45 minutes here. And that's for a trooper. 45 minutes to show up. In that time period, I could be killed, cut up into pieces, put up in somebody's truck, in the back of a trunk, and gone. And there wouldn't be any evidence. 45 minutes. Do you want to wait? Or do you want to be the recognition of a first responder, which is you are the first response, which means you need to be able to respond directly. You need to be in a place where you have the tools, aka one of these or other things that I'll be talking about in further episodes. You want to be in a country that allows you to do that. If you're Swiss and you're in Switzerland, kudos. Don't let the elites take it away from you. They've been trying to take away your right to self-defense and the defense of your country for years. And they've almost won, like, what, 5, 6 years ago? Damn. Even Switzerland. Because they know if they can disarm you, you have no response. Like my friend in Argentina. He's got no response. What's his response? He's got his setup in his farm, which is that he has an exit strategy for him and his family to get off his property. You show up on my property to take my livelihood, my food and sustenance. There's only one way it's going to go. And that's what every American understands and knows. A real American, which is you cross the line. You better have everything you need to take over the whole place. And you better know where everything is. You need to be able to defend your land. You need to be able to live off your land. You need to be able to be tied to your community. We have a bridge that comes here. What do you think that bridge is going to be? It's going to be the bridge at Lexington. It's going to be the bridge at Concord. Because whatever first shots happen, it's not just me. It's everybody up and down this road. Because they know, every one of them knows, that if you bow down to tyranny, you're done. You're done. That's how we got into this place. We get into this in the first place. You bow down. Oh, well, you're going to give me money. Oh, I'll bow down. You're going to give me this. Oh, I'll bow down. Oh, I'll go in the military because, hey, constitutionally, you're not supposed to have a large army, but hey, that's okay because you're going to pay me. Yeah, because I can't find a job anywhere else. Why? You need to find a job? Okay, it's gone so far away from what our identity is. Let me remind you. In this country, before Rockefeller and his cronies all got together and hypnotized people into thinking that, ooh, you have to be an employee in order to make money, in order to feed your family. Totally negating the fact that there were no, quote, employees, except maybe we're in a country store that somebody owned and somebody worked in for themselves, not as an employee, but as an owner of the store, the owner of the business, a one-person business. Didn't have to be an LLC because everybody had their own business. People had businesses. And the business might be a farm. It might be a store. It might be a service. The blacksmith. He wasn't an employee. He was a blacksmith. My great-grandfather was not an employee. He was a store owner. And when he got older and he was like really looking at these new things called vehicles, like Model Ts that came to Spokane, that's when he became an employee. And then he was a salesman because he liked to talk to people. He hated being a farmer. That's why he sold his share to his brothers back in Iowa and moved my family, my grandfather and my great uncles and great aunts to Fort Shaw, Montana, and from Fort Shaw, Montana to Spokane. He didn't want to be a farmer. Fine. Then he became a salesman. And he sold things out of a store. He owned a store. People had their own businesses. They weren't employees. We need to get back to that. And the way you can get back to that is based on where you live and what country you live in. Choose your country wisely. I'm not going to be like this nerd right here. I'm going to talk about him because he's actually ruined a lot of countries for people. So every country that he talks about going to, I would never go to now because he's already selling it. If he's selling it, it's sold. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's kind of like stocks. The stocks you want to buy, you don't hear about them publicly. You hear about them before they go public. Is that illegal? Kinda. But that's how people get rich. And everybody else comes in as a sucker. And that's the reason have avoided Wall Street for years. Never affected me. Done really well. Even when I got options from companies, you know what the first thing I did? Right when those options matured, I sold them. Got rid of them immediately. And I got them at the price that they came out as. And thank God I did. Because just about every stock that I sold at, except for one that I came in, and that was at Apple, that sucked. No, not Apple. AOL. I was in media communications in AOL. In documentation at AOL. And I came in through another company that had been bought out. And so the stocks that I had, they didn't transfer well to AOL. That was the only reason I got screwed on that one. That's why I'm like, nah, I don't do Wall Street. I do gold and silver. I do ammunition. I do real estate. Because just like it was told to my father didn't pay attention to that. And that is, they're not making any more real estate. They're not making any more land. That's a commodity. That is something that is got a finite, just like gold and silver. It's finite. Stocks, you can print up as much paper as you want. And don't ever buy gold and silver on paper. If you don't hold it, you don't. If you don't possess it, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. That's the saying. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. But what am I going to do? I can't have it. You got to learn how to freaking hide stuff. You got to learn how to hide stuff. And that doesn't mean hide it in a safe deposit box. If you haven't heard already, FBI goes into safe deposit boxes. Uncle Sugar is starting to become Uncle Salt. Not tasty when you're expecting sugar. So again, I'll just give you a list. So right now, maybe Uruguay for another 10 years. Are you willing to have to move from Uruguay in about 10 to 15 years? Go to Uruguay. 20 years, Paraguay. Ecuador, fuck. Don't go to Ecuador. Ecuador's fucked. And that really pisses me off. Like I said, I've got family there. It's fucked. So all the work that I did with my cousin to try and keep the freaking cartels out of Ecuador, they're in. They're solidly in. The whack-a-mole game that we played in Colombia, it's over. They're all through that area. That's going to be actually the new war, because we need a war, right? So it is the cartel war. It's going to be Western Hemisphere. United States, we're going to do the drug war again. How effective was that last time? Wow. Because it's the government controlling it. When the people take back their country and it's run by the people, that's when all this shit goes away, because it's culturally. But that's why the evildoers over the generations had degraded us. We are not what our parents were. We are not what our grandparents were. Societally, physically, mentally, we're not even close to what they were. How many people can do mathematics in their brain without running to a freaking calculator? I remember when the first Texas Instruments came out, and we were not allowed to use it in math class, except to check our work. That was it. Now, they tell the kids to do their work with a calculator. So they're not firing the synapses in the brain that can enable you to do that. So let's say you're older and you don't have a calculator and you're trying to do the math. Well, you try to do it on paper, by hand. How do you do that? That's where we're at right now. Whew. So keep an eye out on what's happening in Argentina. The experiment is down there with all of it. The fires in Patagonia, setting up the new Israel that's going to be there. On the cheap, of course, because Milei'S set it up. Milei is even doing the social media in the same way that Trump came in and used all the media. So Milei was bragging about how they were using ads in Minecraft and what was it called? Roblox? I don't know these freaking video games. I don't have any interest about these video because these video games, yeah, Roblox. So they play the video games. The kids down in Argentina play Roblox. They play Minecraft. So they pop in ads, pro Milei and pro whatever Milei'S government's doing. So that's the psyop. They're hitting. And they do that. So they put all their money into creating the facade while the country's going to shit. So see what's happening in the United States. You think it's happening down there only? Look at what's happening here and how they're playing the game. How they've been using Patel. And then there's a sudden, quick release of all the Epstein files that are very damning on Trump and all the people involved with Trump. Think about that. Was it accidental? Was it a revenge thing from the Israelis because we didn't bomb Iran last week? Or could it have been somebody working in the government who's so disgusted and just couldn't handle it anymore and just released him? Just a dump. And so that's why it was available to everybody to look at. And how many people are going to have the conscience that they can't be under an administration that's been run by a pedophile? Even no matter... So what if he's doing good? What if he's making the deals? What if he's actually making the deals and succeeding? But he did all this stuff with Epstein. How is the society? This is the psyop. Is the fractionation, fracturing and splitting, and causing the animosity, increasing the chaos, bringing our levels down instead of being happier and lighter and focus on making better things. Instead, sucked up into the situation where we've got a question of, can you be okay with a government that is just so rife with all these people who've been party to what Epstein's been doing? And who was running him? Yeah, he's Mossad, but who's running Mossad at that time? Who was, and is Epstein even dead? I don't think he's dead. I think he had a facial restructuring, and he might be in Patagonia already, or he might be somewhere else on a beach. That's the sad thing you learn. It's not like in the movies where you go, yeah, the bad guy gets it. A lot of times the bad guy doesn't get it. But sometimes I have dreams, and it starts like this, where a car opens and you see a friend. But let's close out with the guy who does it best, Max von Sydow.
It would happen this way. You may be walking. Maybe the first sunny day of the spring. And a car will slow beside you. And a door will open. And someone you know, maybe even trust, will get out of the car. And he will smile. A becoming smile. But he will leave open the door of the car and offer to give you a lift.
You seem to understand it all so well. What would you suggest?
Personally, I prefer Europe.
Europe?
Yes. Well, the fact is, what I do is not a bad occupation. Someone is always willing to pay.
I would find it tiring.
Oh, no. It's quite restful. It's almost peaceful. No need to believe in either side or any side. There is no courage. There's only yourself. The belief is in your own precision.
I was born in the United States, Joe. I miss it when I'm away too long.
A pity.
I don't think so. Is it any trouble to drop me at the Union Station?
Oh, no. Would be my pleasure. for that day.